Yeah.
Because they're not part of, because they said in the whole narrative, that's the people that are doing it, but in the checklist, they wanted their names.
Okay.
But, yeah, so
That's good.
I still got 3 weeks to figure it out. I figure, hey, if it's wrong, they'll fix it.
Yeah. We're in the design phase, like our
So you
100%.
guys are already
Yeah,
doing it?
our 100% design phase is due Friday.
Okay.
So we're gonna make it.
Who's gonna manage it?
I'm the manager, and then I have my engineers running, helping me. I think it's on. Testing. Oh, you want, let me. Sorry. Morning.
Good morning, everybody. Madam Chair, we do have a quorum present both virtually and in person. My staff will continue to monitor our panelists to make sure we have all the members promoted.
Okay.
But we are
let's-
ready to get started when you are.
All right, let's begin. I would like to call to order the April 7th, 2021 meeting of the TPA's Technical Advisory Committee. Pursuant to the TPA Emergency Order 2021-01, the Palm Beach TPA is conducting this meeting virtually using the Zoom webinar platform. The TPA selected this platform because it does not require the public to purchase or download any additional software or equipment to attend this meeting. Aside from the Zoom webinar platform that the participants will use to attend remotely, the public will have no discernible difference in their ability to watch the meeting from that of someone physically attending the meeting. Instruction to join this virtual meeting, as well as contact information for a TPA staff member to assist you, are provided in the published meeting agenda. Please note that although some members of the TAC are attending the meeting in person, committee members will be appearing at today's meeting remotely, either via webcam or telephone. Additionally, scheduled presenters and the TAC liaison will also be appearing via webcam or telephone. Staff, please call the roll so that we can establish the quorum.
Before I call the roll, I want to remind members present in person to unmute your microphones by hitting the base. And then those that are present virtually, please remember to unmute yourself. Alternates, please state your name if you're attending on behalf of a TAC representative. Modus Alturk,
Yes.
Anna Bielowska,
Here.
Terrence Bailey,
Here.
Jim Bell,
Here.
Jamie Brown,
Here.
Lena Camacho,
Here.
Lorraine Cargill,
Vicky Gatanis for Lorraine Cargill.
Natalie Crowley,
Mike Morrow for Natalie.
Brian Davis,
Present.
Kim Delaney,
Here.
Thomas Driscoll,
Jen Jen Lan on behalf.
Kara Ferris, Alex Hansen,
Here.
Aaron Hoffman,
Here.
Andrew Mack,
Mike Rump for Andrew Mack.
Joyce Kai,
Here.
Christopher Marsh,
This is Bradford O'Brien on behalf of Christopher Marsh.
Michael Odell,
Here.
Richard Pereira,
Present.
Richard Reed,
Kim Glass Castro for Rich Reed.
Gary Sypek,
Will Hicks for Gary Steinbeck.
Maria Tahara is excused, Kenny Wilson.
Here.
John Crane.
Here.
We have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Staff, are there any modifications to the agenda?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to item C, motion to approve the minutes for March 3rd, 2021. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, can I have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
Move to approve. To adopt, rather.
Second.
So I have a motion by Vicky and a second by Terrence.
I have a motion by Vicky and a second by Terrence. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Moving on to the next is the general public comments and public comments on agenda items. I will summarize our public comment procedures for this virtual meeting. Written comments may be submitted online at the website provided in the agenda. Verbal comments may be made by virtual attendee using the raise hand feature in the Zoom platform. Lastly, a verbal and/or written comment may be provided by an in-person attendee submitting a comment card available at the welcome table. Staff, have any general comments been received?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item. First are comments from the chair and members. I don't have any comments this afternoon. If there are any committee members that has a comment for the committee, please utilize the raise hand function of the Zoom platform to ask to be recognized. And then remember to unmute your microphone once you are recognized. Do you have any raised hands?
I do not. And I don't see any tent cards raised either.
Yes. Okay, next item is the TAC liaison report. I'd like to invite Andrew up to the podium to provide an update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm not going to be your liaison today. We actually have a new employee with us coming from Broward MPO. He just started at the TPA. His name is Connor Campobasso. We're excited to have him on staff. He's going to be the long range transportation plan coordinator, and then also is going to serve as your liaison moving forward. So I'd like to welcome him, and he's going to introduce himself as well, and then he's going to go through the liaison report.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Connor Campobasso. I am the new LRTP. Thank you. My name is Connor Campobasso. I am the new LRTP coordinator, and with that, I will also be your new liaison for the TAC. To give a little background on my experience in the past, I'm coming from about 7 years of planning experience, some of which was actually in Palm Beach County, but a majority of that was working with the Broward MPO as a program manager. And with that, I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to working with you all. Yeah, with that, I will transition to the liaison report. The first item I have here is just that the TPA wanted to recognize Glenn Harvey for his 14 years of service on our CAC. We appreciate his commitment of personal time and the knowledge that he brought to the committee as well. March was Florida Bike Month. A total of 13 Florida Bicycle Month proclamations were passed here in Palm Beach County, 11 of which were done by municipalities. In order to promote bicycling in the month of March, the TPA participated in 4 events and promoted an additional 8 other events as well. The TPA also hosted a webinar series with topics on women in bicycling and cycling for sustainable cities. So if you missed out on those webinar series, they can be found on our website under the special meetings in the agendas and meetings section. Members of Congress are now able to submit specific projects for funding to be included in the 2021 Surface Transportation Authorization legislation. Submittals are due to Congress by April 16th. So if you are interested, or if your agency is interested, please reach out to me so I can help coordinate TPA support and the coordination of the project. Speaking of additional funds, the AARP Community Grant Challenge is due April 14th. This grant is designated to or designed to fund quick action projects that can help communities become more livable for people of all ages. For more information on this, you can visit aarp.org/community challenge. DOT is hosting a LAP virtual training on April 21st. This is really designed for local agency project managers, engineers, and procurement staff who develop bid packages, construction specifications, contracts, and other procurement related documents for construction. If you have a lab project coming up or you plan on submitting a lab project in the future, I would highly recommend you attend this training. If you are interested, there is a link on the liaisons report that you can follow to register. And the last thing I have today is that National Bike to School Day will be held on May 5th this year. If you are interested in attending that, you can register at walkbiketoschool.org/registration. And that is all I have for the liaison report. Again, I'm happy to be here and I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair, but I do have Vicky Gatanis with her hand raised.
Okay, Vicky?
Yes. I have a question on the STP projects. In a recent TPA board meeting, Nick discussed that earmarks will be back in Congress, or if they're not now, it's most likely they will be. And that if agencies put projects forth for earmarks, if they get it, it isn't extra money. It takes away from the existing pot and can push other projects back. And so I'm wondering if that applies to this program as well.
Good morning, Vicky. This is Andrew Euler again. That is a good question. You know, first I can say is we don't know for sure where the, when we talk about these earmarks, let's just go back 1 second to explain what those are. You all should have received the email this morning about member designated projects. And so this is like a formalized process for earmarked projects that all these different representatives will be submitting. And so that's what she's referring to. And so what I can say to what you're saying now is that we don't know for sure if this is going to impact, if this money is going to be coming out of currently already dedicated funding towards surface transportation funds. So that's the first point, is we're not sure if it's going to be from that or if it's going to be money above that level that we already receive. And then the second point, I think, goes back to more about how products are administered when it comes to administering products here in the state. And so this might relate a little bit more to the same thing as when you go for earmarks here in the state of Florida to the state legislature, right? So if you put that forward and it's something that might have to be done by FDOT, that's something that's sort of impacting their implementation timeline for other products if they have to push that one forward. So possibly when it comes to administering products like that, but if these are locally administered projects that people are submitting for, you know, I'm not sure if there's going to be any issue with the timeline impacting other projects.
So, and just a follow up there, then these projects could include things like shared path or trailways or.
Yes, and I forgive me, I'll have to read more into the details of product eligibility, but I believe it's the same eligibility that you're seeing under current surface transportation funding. So think of something like our local initiatives program, those same types of infrastructure projects, as well as ones that are eligible under FTA.
Then I wonder if they would be, if you would be forced to do a lab project for those, or if they would. Oh, you would.
You are correct. It's going to be federal funds, so the product will be federalized. So yes, you would have to be going through a lab project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other hands?
I don't see any, Madam Chair.
I just want to say one more thing on that. I'm sorry, Chair. There's an email that was sent out. So if you want more information, Congresswoman Lois Frankel, their staff put out a release, and that's what is provided to you all as guidance. So when you submit these, obviously you'll be going through your own congressional district, but that's a good guidance that you guys can look at. And if you have any more questions, just reach out to the TPA.
Thank you. We'll move on in the agenda to action items. The first is the motion to recommend adoption of amendment number 4 to fiscal year 2021 to 2025 Transportation Improvement Program. I'd like to invite Jason Price, the TPA TIP Coordinator, to present this item.
Good morning, Jason's not with us. Oh, he's coming right now. Apologize, 1 second.
Morning, everyone. Sorry for the delay. So tonight I'm going to go over amendment number 4 for the Transportation Improvement Program. And the Transportation Improvement Program is the 5-year funding program for transportation projects in Palm Beach County. So just as a reminder, this is an action item requiring a vote after the end of the presentation and the discussion. So this amendment includes the modification of 2 FDOT projects and the modification of 1 SFRTA project that operates Tri-Rail. And as a note for correction in the agenda packet, there was a note that there was 4 projects listed to be amended, but it's actually only 3 projects that are listed. So just to review why TIP amendments come before you as an action item. TIP amendments are required under certain circumstances, which are listed here on the slide. The first being when a project is either added or deleted. The second is when a cost increase is more than 20% of the project and $2 million. The next is when there's a change in scope where the length of a project is changed by 0.5 mile and 20%, as well as the number of through lanes, the through traffic lanes are changed. In addition, amendments are not required. Well, in addition, only projects in the amendment are the ones that are impacted in the Transportation Improvement Program, and no other project is impacted by this action. I'll now begin. I'll now review the 3 projects that are part of this amendment. Okay, the first project here is I-95 at Lantana Road. For this particular project, there's an increase in design funds and the project length as the selection through the project development and environmental phase. The preferred alternative was selected as the diverging diamond interchange. So to accommodate the design of the selected preferred alternative, the divergent diamond interchange, there's an addition of the design funds to accommodate this. You won't see construction funds just yet until these phases are moved further along, and then you'll begin to see construction in later tips and in a later tip document. I also have an illustration of what this preferred alternative looks like. And you may recall that back in April 2020, this was all of the different alternatives were illustrated and at that meeting, and this ended up being the preferred alternative. And so this is what you see before you today. One of the things to note is there's a auxiliary road that goes underneath the interchange to accommodate traffic flow at some of the commercial developments along this corridor. The next project is also an FDOT project, and this is at US 27 and Okalanta Road intersections. So along this corridor, this is an addition of construction funds to accommodate acceleration to accommodate auxiliary lanes along the intersections along this corridor. So you can see at the bottom for the proposed action, there's the construction fund as a line item for about 2.8 million. Now, the last project as part of this amendment is a transit or is a transit amendment, and this is an amendment that includes the deletion of the Delray Trolley project at their request. And that money was then requested to be moved to the Tri-Rail layover station, which is an existing project in the tip. And the 860,000 was then moved and added to the Tri-Rail Northern layover maintenance facility. So that is the 3 project as part of this amendment. And if there's any questions.
Staff, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair. I do have Alex with his hand raised.
Okay, Alex?
Yes, I have a couple of questions associated with the Northern Layover facility. One is kind of a procedural question. What was the process that was followed in order to determine that the monies that were now available as a result of the deletion of the Delray Trolley project should go to the SFRTA Northern Layover facility? I mean, was that the next project in line? I mean, what was the decision-making process in order to determine that the money should go from Delray to the SFRTA project? That's question number one. The second one, I know several years ago when the Northern Layover facility was designed, it was indicated that SFRTA had enough funds to actually construct the facility. Then my understanding is the scope of the project was expanded, and then there was a shortfall of funding in order to construct the facility. I read in the agenda some reference that now SFRTA, I guess as a result of this additional funding, intends to start the design build process sometime later this year. Does that mean that with this additional funding, SFRTA has enough money in order to finalize the construction of the project? So is this going to fill in any gaps that may exist for the construction? And if so, when should we expect for the project to be completed?
Okay, so to start with the first question, the funds were already flexed over to, they were taken and flexed into become transit funds so that they were no longer being tracked by us. So we know that these funds they couldn't be repurposed or moved to any other project other than a transit project. In terms of the prioritization or selection of a specific project in, say, a ranking, I think this probably was one of those projects that was already existing in the tip, and these funds just seemed to fit well here. I can't really say that there was a pecking order or a prioritization process to say these funds should go here over and above another project or a prioritization process. I don't know if maybe Vicky is on the line, if she could speak to that, but really it's just, I feel like that's the best answer I have at the time. And for the second part, the last year, when we went through the amendment process, we did provide funds for this project through another repurposing of transit funds. And through that process, SFRTA listed out a number of kind of improvements that they could do if they had additional money. And so the initial cost of the Northern Layover facility was kind of a base price for what they could do with just constructing it as is or as a base. And then they had listed, bulleted out several different items that could be added to the project to just be a more complete project or just additions. And so I believe these funds will be used towards providing some of those additional facilities within the northern layover facility construction. But I would, if SFRTA is on the line and could speak a little bit more to it, if possible.
Yes, thank you, Jason. I mean, that was a pretty thorough explanation. In a recent quarterly meeting that we have with the TPA staff, because the RTA administers transit funds and the trolley funds were coming through the RTA. We did ask if they could be repurposed. And we were informed that, we should submit a letter and a request, which we did. And Jason's right, the original estimates were for base design and construction. And, as the project was developing internally and with consultants, the costs were increased. But, the thinking was it costs less to do it now than to try and retrofit or do it later. And the project will be design build. So during that back and forth in the design process, costs could go up. So we first proposed a different project. The TPA staff responded that they preferred to put money on this project because it's already a well-established project with funds on it. So that's what we requested, and that was approved. As far as the timeline, Alex, I don't have the exact timeline, but it's the project was advertised and it'll be in design for up to 2 years and then go into construction.
Does that answer your question, Alex, or do you have a follow-up question?
So I understanding that there may be some modifications, some changes, but SFRTA thinks now that it has sufficient funding to at least build the majority or the core of the project. And again, West Palm Beach has a special interest in this because this new facility would be located in part in West Palm Beach, and also it will result in the existing layover facility, which is located in downtown, to be moved. So we have a special interest on the outcome of this. I just wanna. So your understanding, Vicky, is that as a result of this, there will be sufficient funding to proceed ahead with the construction. Understanding that again, you never know what may happen during the final design and construction. That is the intent of SFRTA at this point?
Yes, pretty much it is, Alex. And, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't read the future, but yes. And, and we fully expect this project to be a huge improvement and a great asset for the train transit.
Okay, thank you.
And West Palm Beach is supportive of the project, but again, it's just that I remember being in meetings about this 5 years ago, or at least, discussing the design, and at the time the project seemed imminent, and here we are. So 5 years later, so I just want to be more aware of the timing and what the expectations are for SFRTA at this point with the actual construction schedule.
Right, and Alex, I can either, talk to you by phone and update you more, and also with our PM, our planning PM, Jessica Vargas. But, I'm happy to bring more information to a future meeting as well. But as it stands right now, I think, Jason's response and the information I've been able to provide, that's the status.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you.
Do we have any other hands raised?
Oops.
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. I need a motion to recommend adoption of amendment number 4 to fiscal year 21-25 TIP, and then I'll open the floor to further discussion.
I'll make the motion to adopt. This is Anna.
Second.
Who was the second?
Michael O'Dell.
Okay. Okay. Any discussion on the item? Do we have any? I don't see any cards up in-house. Are there any hands raised?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, I have a motion by Anna and a second by Odell. We're going to do this vote by roll call. So Margie, can you please call the roll?
Yes, so the motion on the floor is to recommend adoption of amendment number 4 to the fiscal year 21-25 Transportation Improvement Program as presented. Before I call the roll, virtual members, please unmute your microphones, and in-person members, just remember to hit the button on the base. When it's red, it's on. And please respond by saying either yes or no when I call your name. Modesum Alturk,
Yes.
Anna Bielowska,
Yes.
Terrence Bailey,
Yes.
Jim Bell,
Yes.
Jamie Brown,
Yes.
Lena Camacho,
Yes.
Vicky Gatanis,
Yes.
Michael Morrow,
Yes.
Brian Davis,
Yes.
Kim Delaney, CJ Land,
Yes.
Kara Ferris,
Yes.
Alex Hansen,
Yes.
Aaron Hoffman,
Yes.
Michael Rumpf,
Yes.
Joyce Kai,
Yes.
Bradford O'Brien,
Yes.
Michael Odell,
Yes.
Richard Pereira,
Yes.
Kim Glass Castro,
Yes.
Will Hicks,
Yes.
Maria Tahara is marked as absent, Kenny Wilson.
Yes.
It passes unanimously, Madam Chair.
Thank you
Thank you
very
all.
much. Next on the agenda are informational items. The first is the Florida East Coast Railway Quiet Zone update. I'd like to invite Kim Delaney, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, Director of Strategic Development and Policy, to present this item.
Try it again. There we go. So try third try. Good morning, Kim Delaney, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and thanks for the opportunity to present an update to the TAC on quiet zone activity on the FEC corridor. Towards this effort, the Regional Planning Council is assisting the TPA as an extension of its staff to help coordinate activities related to quiet zones, public outreach, engagement with the FRA, which is the Federal Railroad Administration, and community outreach as we navigate through the waters of getting quiet zones established along Brightline Phase 2. So this PowerPoint presentation provides a little summary of where we are with respect to quiet zones. I'm the point of contact on behalf of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. So as there are questions, technical or community based, If you can feel free to direct those questions to me, and we'll help coordinate getting those answers back to the local governments and the public. Just by way of background, for those of you who don't recall, what is a quiet zone as defined by the Federal Railroad Authority? Quiet zones are locations where railroads have been directed to no longer blow the horns, right? Cease the sounding of horns when approaching grade crossings. And they're directed to do that by actions of the local governments who control the intersecting roadway network. Only local governments or entities that control the roadways can establish a quiet zone. So Brightline cannot establish a quiet zone because it doesn't control the roadway network. FECR, Florida East Coast Railroad, cannot establish a quiet zone. And DOT, for the most part, through Palm Beach County, can't establish a quiet zone either. That responsibility really lies on the local governments. Pardon me. And the federal code dictates the parameters by which quiet zones can be established. As the committee is familiar, quiet zones were established in conjunction with Brightline Phase 1 from West Palm Beach down to Boca, and so now the focus is on the northern portion. The purpose of a quiet zone is to make a quieter environment for residents near the corridor. We do lots of work with local governments, as do you, have lots of outreach with residents. There's a mix of opinions about whether or not people are enthusiastic about trains. So we're tending, I think, towards the majority of residents seem to think the train's a good idea on average, but there are very few people who think train horns are a good idea. And so quiet zones give us a chance to quiet the corridor, but still allow trains to operate in the safest manner possible. To enable a quiet zone to be established, there's a couple of pieces of work that are necessary. The key one being the addition of safety measures, exit gates, non-traversable medians, and additional lights and signage to help folks realize a train is approaching. In establishing a quiet zone, there's an analysis of safety conditions that is operated through an online quiet zone calculator, which is an engineering analysis to determine what the risk of an accident would be with horns or without horns. And so the graph on the table illustrates what's referred to as the quiet zone risk reduction activity that's produced by running the quiet zone calculator. And the presumption in the calculator is that by adding additional safety measures, right, like adding an extra set of gates or adding a median so folks can't cut around a gate and cut through the intersection. So by adding those additional safety measures, adding a horn to the presence of a train in that grade crossing really at that point doesn't add enough additional risk mitigation for it to be meaningful. So if there's 4 quadrant gates, for example, at a grade crossing, and there's advanced signage and lights flashing to say, hey, drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists, there's a train approaching and stay out of the grade crossing. What the federal law enables and acknowledges is that if you add a horn to that, if someone wants to get into a bad situation, unfortunately, and get into the grade crossing, a horn blowing in addition to all the rest of that doesn't make it any safer. At that point, you're really relying on good decision making by a person who's aware that a train's coming. So that's really what risk reduction entails. And so again, this graph indicates the math associated with risk reduction. So there's a base level of risk that exists in any grade crossing based on the amount of traffic, the history of crashes, the number of trucks and school buses that are crossing the grade crossing. Those all add up to develop an index, which is a safety rating. And then when you run the quiet zone calculator, you add in the additional safety measures that are planned and develop a risk index that indicates the risk index with horns or the risk index without horns. And to establish a quiet zone, you have to be able to confirm that with all the safety infrastructure that you plan to add, the risk index without horns is equal to or less than the level of risk you would have with horns. And so again, an online calculator that the local governments for the most part are very familiar with. And if you're not familiar with it yet, in Quiet Zone Phase 2 for Brightline, that's our task that's ahead of us. With respect to what quiet zones look like, again, committee members are very familiar with the conditions that we have in Palm Beach County. We have 2 quadrant gates at a minimum at all of our grade crossings. And so those are called entry gates. So when you enter the grade crossing, there's a gate that comes down to prevent the car entering from getting into the grade crossing when there's a train present. The standard of care, the kind of the default condition for quiet zones tends to be a 4 quadrant gate, although that's not always required. But nonetheless, a 4 quadrant gate is the safest way to design an intersection where you have both entry and exit gates. So the illustration on the right-hand side of the slide illustrates that. And so there's no way to cut through that grade crossing, as you can see, because the gates overlap or they touch one another. Where you have 2 quadrant gates, which is illustrated on the left-hand side, the way to make that safer is to add what's called a non-traversable median. So the median has to extend at least 60 feet back, in some instances 100 feet, depending on the speed of the train. So if you have a median that extends back in a 2 quadrant gate, you can't reasonably cut around it and then jump through the grade crossing when the gates are down. That's what the intent of that safety measure is. And again, we have grade cross safety quiet zones have already been established from West Palm Beach down to Boca. In addition, of course, the TPA has highly prioritized safety as part of the mission of its work along the FEC corridor, as well as the rest of the transportation network. And so pedestrian safety along the Brightline corridor is particularly focal in the advance of quiet zones. Considering the tragic history we've had on the corridor, we've had the introduction of new service in the region in the past few years, and there's a lot of folks that sadly have been suicidal, they've been impaired due to drug and alcohol use, or have just made bad decisions. And so we've had a number of sad crashes that have involved pedestrians and bicyclists for the most part. So examples of pedestrian safety mitigations that are available are the types of infrastructure that are noted on this slide. Adding sidewalks, of course, a good measure. Tactile plates for ADA awareness as you approach a grade crossing to let you know something different is ahead. Pedestrian-oriented gates, flashing lights, and also signage on sidewalks. They're all kind of best practices related to enhancing pedestrian safety. I think as a region, we've learned a lot with the introduction of service on phase 1 of the Brightline corridor. And so phase 2 gives us additional awareness about safety mitigation measures that have been successful, those that have worked in other places, and the extra effort necessary to make it as safe as possible along the corridor. So Brightline phase 2, of course, extends from West Palm Beach north to Tequesta. The Tequesta grade crossing, just to note, is split between unincorporated Palm Beach County on the south and unincorporated Martin on the north. But all the grade crossings are the subject of the Regional Planning Council's work with the TPA staff in phase 2, with the intent of having a continuous quiet zone broken up into parts, right? Individual quiet zones that connect together from West Palm north to the northern Palm Beach County line. With respect to progress to date, there's lots of activity that's been underway with Brightline's construction. We've gone through the process to confirm which grade crossings are the ones that are the subject for quiet zones in phase 2. That would be all of them from West Palm up to Tequesta. There are safety measures that have been engineered for each crossing and embedded in Brightline's work program. We are in the process of continuing to evaluate risk reduction to establish quiet zones. The baseline analysis indicates that quiet zones can be established. And of course, as we move through time, there's data that is always updated with respect to crashes and the volume of traffic along the corridor. And so we'll continue to analyze risk reduction as local governments approach the opportunity to establish quiet zones when construction is completed. The TPA has already allocated funding for additional safety upgrades, and the board is familiar with that in the budgets that have been adopted to date. Brightline has initiated its construction and coordination, and also we've initiated outreach with FRA to confirm we are moving along the right path towards establishment and in advance of field verification and workshops with local governments that will take place later this year. A timeline that illustrates that that activity is on this next slide. And so we're heading towards a quiet zone workshop in the summer to bring FRA staff down to meet with local governments along with FDOT staff, Brightline, and TPA to talk through the mechanics related to getting quiet zones established. We will be making presentations to local governments. We would expect in the fall. We've delayed our outreach a bit based on Brightline's construction activity. As the board is aware from Brightline's prior presentations, COVID-19 introduced a bit of delay in their construction timeframe. And so instead of completing the quarter in this year, the expectation is they'll likely complete construction sometime towards the end of next year. That said, we'd expect by the summer of next year for local governments to begin moving towards issuing notices of intent. So an NOI, as it's referred to, is step one, which indicates the local government representative has confirmed the infrastructure planned is sufficient to allow for the establishment of a quiet zone. That's the process. The engineering representative for the local government or city manager certifies that. And then a notice of intent is issued by certified mail. And there's a review period during which DOT or Brightline or any other party can ask questions and question the validity of the quiet zone. If any questions are raised, once those are mitigated, construction activity would be completed, we'd expect towards the end of 2022, and local governments can move towards issuing notices of establishment or NOEs, as they're referred to, probably in the beginning of 2023. That's the timeline. I always prefer to be at the podium with information that everybody wants to hear. That timeline isn't always the one that people really want. So I get lots of phone calls from citizens who are wondering when trains started running on the FEC corridor and blowing their horn. I have to let them know that Henry Flagler actually built the railroad in 1893, and it predated the purchase of their home in January, of 2021. And so there's a continuing dialogue with residents that we're happy to assist with, because there's lots of frustration from folks who expected a quiet zone to be established by now, and darn it, why hasn't it happened? Just a couple of pieces of information that are standard in our discussions with residents. There theoretically could be an ability to establish a quiet zone early, but that would require all of the safety infrastructure be completed and certified. And Brightline doesn't have that in its schedule until after it finishes double tracking the corridor and building bridges. So of the $1.7 billion of infrastructure that's under construction now, the quiet zone infrastructure takes place at the end of that construction cycle. And so that is now not the schedule established by local governments or the TPA. That's a schedule that's been established by Brightline. We certainly can ask Brightline to adjust the schedule, but we don't believe it's likely that there's any scenario where Brightline would expedite the construction of quiet zone infrastructure ahead of completing all those other pieces. So just, if that comes up in conversation, that's some of the dialogue that we have with residents that have lots of frustration, and we understand that. But everyone's moving as quickly as possible to get the corridor completed in the safest and most efficient manner so that we can establish quiet zones as quickly as possible. Again, with a realistic expectation being quiet zones established in the early part of 2023. So that said, contact information if anyone needs it. General rail information is available, of course, on the TPA's website. Brightline has a schedule of construction activity that is posted on the gobrightline.com page. You have to look for it under railroad construction, and then you can click over to a section where Brightline has regular construction updates that are posted on about a monthly, sometimes a bi-monthly basis, but usually it's about every 4 weeks or so. And you can also get on an email list, or if you have residents that want to get on that list, they can simply add their name to the list and get inbox emails on Brightline's construction activity on a 2 or 4 week basis. And then finally, as I mentioned, with respect to coordination activities, we are happy to engage the public or elected officials with questions about quiet zones. As always, if I don't have the information at hand, I can usually get it within about 24 hours. So please don't hesitate to distribute my email address at your discretion. And we handle whatever questions there are and try to get information back as quickly as we can. And also I should mention that James Reinhardt with the TPA is the lead staff member with this project for the TPA. So between the two of us, again, within about 24 hours, we can pretty much always get an answer to whatever question comes up. And so with that, that's the quick overview of where we are in quiet zones. Happy to answer questions for you if you have them. So thanks. Okay, pretty
Thank you.
straightforward. All
Are
right.
there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, do any committee members have any comments? I don't see any cards raised internally. Do we have anyone online?
I do have Vicky with her hand raised,
Okay, Vicky?
and then CJ from Jupiter.
Yeah, thank you. Kim, who maintains these?
Once established, quiet zones are maintained by they're actually maintained by FECR under contract to Brightline. So the railroad entity maintains the quiet zone infrastructure, physically maintains the infrastructure. The local government or the entity that's responsible for the roadway that crosses the grade crossing is the one who pays for that O&M obligation. So that's the way maintenance of grade crossings works.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
CJ? You might have to unmute yourself.
Yes. In addition to the safety measure or safety treatment at the intersections, the crossing, they are talking about also fencing the, if not entire corridor, but at some strategic locations, aware that there's evidence of illegal crossing. How's this dialogue been going on with the Brightline? Do you know?
So sure. So the subject of fencing is continuing to advance in kind of concurrent, if you will, with construction activity. There is some guidance in the federal code and analysis that indicates fencing is certainly fencing is desired where there's a higher speed corridor. You know, remember, one of the things that's tricky about this corridor is it's actually below the definition of what's called a high speed corridor, because the trains are going to be operating through Palm Beach County in this section for the most part between 79 and 110 miles an hour. And that's actually just below the high speed rail guidelines. So that said, you know, there's kind of, with this one, it's a little tricky because there's what the code requires and there's what practically local government representatives feel is appropriate. And those two things aren't necessarily the same. So fencing is an ongoing discussion with Brightline. Fencing costs are not the responsibility of Brightline. They're the responsibility of someone else. Could be the TPA if the board decides, could be the local government. Fencing is available, I think, in any location along the corridor if desired. But again, it's not required. And so, CJ, that's a subject that I think is continuing to be discussed. We do know along phase 2, just like phase 1, there are locations where we have a lot of known pedestrian trespassing. And those locations tend to correspond to areas where we have a higher transit dependent population, right? So if there's more folks that are walking and biking because they have to, there's more people that are going to be walking across the corridor. And those locations tend to be associated or concentrated in locations that are lower income. So there's different challenges with level of education, access to information, awareness in the community, and a generally more challenging condition when it comes to maintaining safety. So that fencing issue is continuing to evolve. I think we have good awareness of the locations where fencing is likely going to be prioritized by local governments. And I think the short answer would be, as we continue to evaluate it, as we have locations that might be identified for additional fencing. That information will come back to the TAC. And the local governments, I would expect, will likely raise that issue as presentations are made to them through the summer and fall. If additional fencing is needed, then we'll have to explore measures by which that fencing would be paid for.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? Thank you very much, Kim.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, the next item is the 561 Plan Overview. I'd like to invite James Reinhardt, TPA Transit Coordinator, to present this item.
Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is James Reinhardt. I'm the lead transit coordinator for the Palm Beach TPA. I'm here to provide an update on the 561 plan. So as a quick reminder for everybody in the room, the TPA's mission and vision is to collaboratively plan, prioritize, and fund a safe and efficient and connected multimodal transportation system. That mission and vision was adopted as part of the 2045 LRTP. And as part of that LRTP, adopted LRTP, we identified or we evaluated for enhanced and frequent transit service, as well as bike and ped safety and first last mile connections, which we titled as part of the 561 plan. And that 561 plan includes looking at 5 north-south corridors, being the two commuter rail and 3 roadway corridors, and 6 east-west corridors, including Okeechobee, Forest Hill and Lake Worth Road, Boynton Beach Boulevard, Atlantic Avenue, and Glades Road. And those 5 north-south corridors and 6 east-west corridors together creating that one connected system. And the reason why we selected these corridors was because 69% of people and 94% of jobs, non-farming jobs, exist within that a 2-mile buffer of these corridors. And that projection of those percentages has stayed the same as when we looked in 2015 as part of the LRTP update. And when we forecasted out to 2045, those percentages stayed about the same. And also these are where the highest ridership transit routes are on Palm Tran, and then of course the commuter rail services. In addition to that, the 2045 Regional Transportation Plan identified these corridors as key connection points for the regional transit investment in the South Florida region, connecting Palm Tran, Broward County Transit, Miami-Dade Transit, and Brightline and Tri-Rail services all together to be able to move people from Palm Beach County down to Broward and Miami-Dade County. And so what we've completed, now that we've identified what a reminder of what the plan is and why we selected those corridors, we're going to start discussing what has been done so far or is in progress related to the 561 plan. To start in 2018, we completed a US1 multimodal corridor study that identified a mixed BRT service, transit service for that corridor in Palm Beach County. Since then, we have, the TPA has programmed funds for preliminary engineering for fiscal year 23 to design enhanced transit stations for that service within their existing FDOT right-of-way. And we've also allocated funds for construction of transit signal priority at stops or at intersections along that corridor as well. And the construction fund, that was the construction funds for fiscal year 23. In addition to transit improvements, there's been roadway improvements for reconstruction on US 1 and Riviera Beach and Lake Park, and lane repurposing projects for Boca Raton and North Palm Beach. Programmed for preliminary engineering for fiscal year 2025 for those two, and construction for fiscal year 25 for the Riviera Beach and Lake Park. In addition to the US 1 activities, there's been a lot of activity happening on the FEC Railway, as Kim discussed with the phase 2 Brightline expansions. But we've also seen that FDOT has completed a Northwood crossover that connects the FEC and the CSX railways together in the county. And then we're continuing to see the phase 2 for double tracking to improve capacity on the FEC corridor. First, it started in South County going into West Palm Beach, and now it's continuing on in North County. And that's part of what those quiet zones, establishing those quiet zones that Kim was discussing in the previous presentation. Soon, Brightline, there's going to be a Brightline station in Boca Raton as well. It's a $46 million project. 10 million of that 46 was provided by Boca, and then there's a $16.4 million grant that was awarded for the construction of that project as well. And for more information about the future of commuter rail on the Coastal Link rail corridor, the Southeast Florida Regional Transportation Council is hosting a workshop on April 30th. And so please reach out to us if you would like to know more information about that. And so now that we've discussed like what has been completed and it's being programmed and underway, we also are kicking off our next corridor study for Okeechobee and State Road 7. The kickoff for that is going to be in spring of 2021 with an advisory meetings and public outreach happening this summer and fall of 2021 so that we can develop a roadway and transit alternatives and complete a land use analysis by this winter so that we can present those final recommendations to the board in the winter of 2021 as well. And so now that we've talked about what the plan is and what is being done to make this plan come from just lines on a map and become an actual projects and moving forward, the next steps that we need to discuss for the 561 plan is first, the TPA will continue to lead corridor studies like it's done on US 1 and Okeechobee Boulevard. And once those develop recommendations for roadway and transit improvements, and then the roadway owners will review and design feasibility, and transit agencies will begin doing detailed transit analysis for operations. But while all those things are happening, we needed to discuss the bottom line of how are we going to fund all of this work that we're pushing to pursue and improve the quality of transit and bike ped connections in Palm Beach County. And so as we can see in the diagram, we have our facility owners and operations and land use parties that are they're all separate, but they're all working together kind of in the cyclical motion where in the Palm Beach TPA is trying to coordinate with all of them so that we can understand the mission and goal of this plan so that we can begin pursuing funding options that include state and federal funds, as well as pursuing that local funding revenue like our partners in Broward and Miami-Dade County have completed or have been able to execute so that we can begin implementing these projects. And that's all I have for that update. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, so staff, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Do we have any raised hands?
Yes, we have Mo with his hand raised.
Mo?
Yeah, good morning. I have a question about the slide that you had. I don't remember, it was 4 or 5, where you are showing the percentage of development within 2-mile radius and employment as well. Could you go back to that one?
Sure.
Yes, this one is good. So apparently this 2-mile radius is intended or indicative of bike, that's the bike scale, basically access, right, to the transit. Is that correct?
Correct. And looking at the bike scale and also like that first last mile connection type services.
Yeah. So have you done any investigation on what percentage of people are within walking distance, which would be probably what, 1/4 mile or maybe maximum 1/2 mile radius?
So as part of our, I apologize, Vice Chair, as part of our corridor study analyses when we were looking at potential station locations for that transit service. We are looking at quarter-mile radius to identify population within that area, as well as the potential for land use development as part of these corridor studies.
Yeah, so that will be done in the upcoming studies. This has not been done yet, so you could not report on that, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
I have Anna Bulowska with her hand raised.
Hi, Anna.
Thank you. I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to make some comments regarding the 561 corridors. First of all, I'd like to thank the TPA for bringing this update forward. And I just kind of wanted to give an update on what we're doing at PalmTran regarding these corridors. So currently, we've begun doing 2 studies for 2 of the identified transit corridors. We have the Okeechobee Boulevard, State Road 7, and the US 1 corridor study underway. So with the Okeechobee, we're looking at transit alternatives for the corridor, including a dedicated, non-dedicated lane. For the US 1 corridor, we're looking at the operation and maintenance costs for that corridor. And the timeline for these projects is end of the summer. And once they're completed, we will be presenting these to the committee. So, and I just wanted to point out that these are our highest ridership corridors. Okeechobee is our most productive corridor, and US 1 is our highest ridership route. So we are excited to be working on these studies here at PalmTran. So thank you.
I have Michael Rump with his hand raised.
Okay, Michael.
Yeah, sorry. Was it stated the timing for the other corridor studies, namely Boynton Beach Boulevard?
We have not set a timeline on those because right now we're working on the Okeechobee. And then once we finish that one, we'll start working through the remaining corridors and prior to start developing studies for those as well.
Great, thank you.
I'm sorry. I have Alex Hanson with his hand raised.
Alex?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this question is for James or actually Anna. You mentioned some upcoming meetings or already some portion of the studies ongoing for the Okeechobee corridor. Are you going to reach out to the City of West Palm Beach's planning department, since we deal with the land use along a good portion of this corridor? And if so, when? And I guess this question could be for James for the TPA aspect, but Anna Bieleska just mentioned what PalmTran is doing too. So I guess kind of a question for both of them.
Sure, and Anna, I can answer first. So as part of the TPA's Okeechobee Boulevard and State Road 7 corridor study, we are developing advisory working groups to look at the transit alternatives, but also then we'll be discussing the land use and economic development components as part of that study as well. And we are developing a list of key stakeholders that will be participating in working groups, as well as having stakeholder interviews to discuss these items as well. And the timeline on that is we are, like I said, we're planning to kick off this project in spring of this year. So we are trying to finalize the work orders so that we can execute that and begin. And once we have that done, we'll be beginning to reach out to those stakeholders for scheduling time.
Anna has comments. I'm sorry.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up that we currently do not have any coordination meetings set up with the City of West Palm Beach, but I just follow up with the project manager for the study, and we'd be happy to include the City of West Palm Beach in the meetings.
Please, thank you.
Okay, any other hands?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, I don't see any raised cards here, so we'll move on to the next administrative items. Number 4, the first is summary points from the March 18th, 2021 Governing Board meeting. This is an informational item only. There's no staff presentation on this item unless requested by a committee member. Staff, are there any public comments or requests for presentation on this item?
I don't have any public comments and I see no hands or 10 cards.
Okay, next is the FDOT scheduling report, April 2021. This is also an informational item only. There's no staff presentation on this item unless requested by a committee member.
I have no hands raised, Madam Chair.
Okay, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, next is the board and committee handbook. I'd like to invite Connor up to present this item.
Sure, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to take a minute to highlight the Governing Board and Advisory Committee handbook. Looks a little something like this. We do update it annually, and we actually just completed an update to the handbook itself very recently. So it's all up to date. It goes over quite a few items, things like how our agency operates, boards, committees, the makeup of the organization. It goes over core products, partner agencies, and staff structure. One of the more helpful things as well is it actually includes a glossary of acronyms and definitions of those acronyms, which is very handy, especially if you're not as familiar with transportation planning or you're not as familiar with transportation terminology. It's very helpful. If you hear mentions of acronyms here in the meetings or anything like that, this is a very handy tool. You can always look them up, or you can ask us as well, but it is there as a resource for you. If you're interested in either downloading this handbook or just taking a quick look at it, you can find it on our website at palmbeachtpa.org/TAC. There should be a download link for you there. But that's all I had. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Staff, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Any committee members that have comments?
I see no hands raised or 10 cards up.
Okay. Our next TAC meeting is scheduled for May 5th, 2021. Thank you for your patience with us as we conducted this meeting today. At this time, our committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you.